Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to get started in a few moments. We'll wait for a few more people to log on. So today we're here to talk about the challenges facing call centers and why the tools that we've relied on for years are no longer enough. So probably you've heard in the news, voice attacks are rising fast. Deloitte actually expects AI to drive US fraud losses towards 40 billion by 2027, which is fast approaching. This shift is creating real pressure on teams to understand what's happening on their phone lines and how to protect the call center channel without hurting customer experience. So in this session today, we're going to walk through the new AI-driven threats in the market, why traditional controls don't work anymore, and how the combination of real-time deepfake detection and biometric authentication can give financial institutions a much stronger foundation of trust. So before we get started, just a couple of very quick housekeeping items. We are recording the session and we'll be resharing the replay with everybody on the call and everyone who registered. You should see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A box, so please submit any questions throughout the session. We'll save some time at the end for Q&A, and anything we don't get to, we'll follow up with you afterwards. So let's do some intros before we jump in. I'm Aphrodite, product marketing lead at Reality Defender and today's moderator. My background is I have 10 years experience as an industry analyst in the call center space. And I'm really excited to welcome two very special guests. We have Ben Coleman, CEO and co-founder at Reality Defender. And Ben has an exceptional experience. He's led cybersecurity commercialization at Goldman Sachs. He's worked at Google and he's advised US government agencies on AI-driven threats. Overall, he has more than 15 years experience building and scaling companies at the intersection of cybersecurity and data science. Welcome, Ben. And we're also joined by Pat Carroll, the CEO and co-founder at ValidSoft. He's an industry pioneer with 20 years experience in identity security. And Pat is credited with multiple patents and innovations spanning real-time voice authentication, fraud prevention, and privacy-compliant biometrics. So welcome, Pat. Ben, I'm going to hand it over to you to give a quick overview of Reality Defender and our deepfake detection solutions.
Thank you, Aphrodite, and thanks to all the guests who have joined us today. At Reality Defender, we focus entirely on stopping harmful manipulation across live and asynchronous video, audio, and images with award-winning deepfake detection. Our multimodal platform scales across all media types and is trusted by government agencies, banks, and Fortune 500 enterprises. We integrate through a two-line API and a range of SDKs, so we are API first, and work with existing platforms like our partners, ValidSoft. We won the RSA Innovation Sandbox Award last year, and we've been recognized by Gartner in multiple hype cycles on AI and cybersecurity, digital identity, and generative AI.
Thank you, Ben. And Pat, I'll hand it over to you to do a quick intro of yourself and ValidSoft for those of you who might not be familiar.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks to everyone for joining today. I'm Pat Carroll, founder and CEO of ValidSoft. And for those that know us, they'll know that voice is at the center of our world. We specialize in AI voice security. And specifically what that means is synthetic voice detection, advanced voice biometrics, speech science, and real-time identity assurance. In terms of the sectors that we focus on, we're sector agnostic, as the issues that we focus on affect every sector across the marketplace today. We're available in many different deployment types. So we're on-premise, we're private cloud, we're public cloud, we're SaaS, we're hosted, we're SDK, we're micro SDK, and we also have, believe it or not, the world's first deployment on chip. Alongside that, we're integrated into all of the leading contact center platforms available across the marketplace today, and we're OEM partners with a number of those. We focus heavily on engineering and on patents. We've got a portfolio of 26 patents. We're very proud of those. We're also very proud of the fact that we're the only security company in the world that's been granted 4 privacy seals from the European Union. And we have, with that, a privacy by design approach, and that's become a big competitive differentiator across the marketplace when you're dealing with privacy sensitive items and elements such as voice biometrics, proximity correlation, and other tools that we bring within our portfolio. Let me stop there and I'll hand back to Aphrodite for the next stage of this discussion.
Thank you so much, Pat and Ben. Great to have you both on the call, and I'm sure we're in for a treat of a discussion. So, we're here to talk about the state of voice and trust. We're seeing voice threats pick up speed, as I mentioned. AI is making it incredibly easy to generate realistic callers, synthetic voices, impersonations of executives, people trying to manipulate existing customers and getting access to systems. So organizations are having to think much more carefully about what's happening in their tech stack. So Pat, from your vantage point, I'd love to know why voice is still such an important channel for contact centers and financial organizations, particularly when we have so many other different ways of communicating today, like chat and email and social media.
Well, it's a really interesting question. And, from our perspective, voice has been around forever. It's the oldest form of communication. And with that, we're also seeing that contact centers have been around for quite some time. We've had contact centers, IVRs, IVAs, ways in which people could call in and communicate with the enterprise or government or whatever. So that's been around us for a long time. What we're seeing also is the next generation of voice. And we're seeing voice exploding in that context. We're starting to see AI voice and all of the good things that come along with that and the new forms of use cases that brings. We're starting to see AI commerce, agentic commerce, and that's going to bring a whole new world. And again, it all falls back on us using our voice to communicate in the most efficient and user-friendly way, which is communicating to machines and impacting commands. Voice is a biometric. We've always focused on voice at the center of our world, and for the simple reason that it's multidimensional. It's not just your voice, but what your voice is saying. And if you combine math and cryptography into that model, you can create really strong security models that are very, very simple to use. At the end of the day, what we want to do in conjunction with Ben and Reality Defender is bring together the two best companies in the world for dealing with the problems that we're seeing across the field today. And we'll talk more about that in a few moments. But it's answered two very basic questions. Is it a human? And is it the right human? And that's the whole focus of our presentation here today.
Absolutely. And let's dig into a bit more of those like threats of what we're seeing. Like Ben would love to hear, why is this so important today? What are people using these AI tools to do, and how can we address this?
It's a really important question in a space where people might have thought that voice would be on the downfall as we're moving more toward web-based or video conferencing or virtual reality or whatever's after virtual reality. But voice just keeps coming back. And what it means is that with the explosion of both traditional voice, but also agentic voice, it means that all of the 20-year-old confidence scams and manipulations of people suddenly are back because they read on a massive scale. What's new and unique here is that anybody without a computer science degree, without any expertise in AI, my 8-year-old son, my 80-year-old parents, can make a near perfect deepfake. They can make a near perfect voice match to impersonate Pat or myself or you, Aphrodite, or anybody here using just a few seconds of audio. Obviously, adding a single image, you do the same thing with video as well. And so what that means is that the do-it-yourself deepfake tools have lowered the barriers for any kind of criminal or somebody curious to see, can it be done? And the surge of agentic AI bots are placing convincing real-time calls. It's not just Google calling a restaurant, make a reservation, which I do all the time, but the old adage where you're always worried that somebody would call and say, hello, we have your daughter, please send money. Now what they're doing with agentic AI and voice is saying, hello, we are your daughter. And what that means is that the fraud lens, which is everywhere, is dramatically accelerating with voice. And it's only going to get more exciting or more dangerous, depending on how you think about it, with the explosion of agentic voice and the abilities and opportunities for criminals to better engage at much, much larger volume.
Absolutely. And, as a result, organizations need to rethink what they're doing. Pat or Ben, would love to hear from you on when you're speaking to organizations on a daily basis, what are the things that you think they're getting wrong or misunderstanding about voice identity? And what do you wish they knew?
So
I'll let Pat go first because we're in New York City and there's, I think, 4 ambulances about to drive by. So I'm going to mute myself for a moment. Go ahead, Pat.
I think the biggest challenge that has arisen over the past 12 to 18 months is not least being the fact that we have some of the hyperscalers leaving the marketplace and the consequences of that in this space that we're in. But it's been the whole impact of deepfake voice and the knock-on effect that's had in terms of people's understanding of the implications on voice biometrics or on deepfake detection. And our own personal experience is that when deepfake voice first emerged and the first cloned voices happened, it caused a shockwave through pretty much the banking sector, anybody that was a large scale organization relying on a contact center. And contact center, in my view, has been the least best looked after front door to your organization. Enterprises, organizations spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year investing in infrastructure security for the enterprise, customer facing security. But the area that's been overlooked is this whole front door that I call, which is the contact center or the help desk in the enterprise. And as soon as this deepfake attack emerged, where I could clone a voice and purport to be somebody else, that caused huge problems for the marketplace. And the question that most enterprises said to us is, what's the veracity of voice biometrics? Does it work anymore? Has deepfake taken the marketplace completely out from under the feet of voice biometrics? And what do we have to do to be able to shore this up? And the analogy that I give is reflect back and go back to when the first computer virus appeared. And everybody said that's the end of computing, right? Because these viruses are going to be everywhere. And yet within 6 months, we had the first antivirus. And this is what we've got here with deepfake detection in particular and synthetic fraud on voice attacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all fantastic points. What we're seeing in the market is obviously AI is everywhere. Every company claims to do some level of AI. Every vendor, every customer, every government says, kind of, me too. We also have AI. And what it's meant in the deepfake detection space is that most companies, most vendors, most solutions are grabbing some open source, maybe doing some modest retraining and saying, oh, we also do deepfake detection. At Reality Defender, this is the only thing that we're doing. And we're truly the only platform in the market that is only doing deepfake detection. That means we're only doing inference. We're not doing any provenance. We're not doing any voice matching. We don't touch any personal data. And that means that you can rest assured when you're integrating a platform like Reality Defender that you're getting the best in class deepfake detection. It is all that we do. Our team is about 50 people. About 35 of them are PhD researchers and engineers. We have over 24 patents and peer-reviewed white papers, and specifically in voice, we're 3 years ahead of anyone else in the market. Without naming any other vendors, because absolutely the world needs many different types of solutions, in voice-based deepfake detection, we have the highest efficacy and the highest accuracy, providing the most efficient, quickest updates of the models that we use, which is why tier one banks like JP Morgan, which is publicly announced we're their partner in the space, tier one government organizations, Department of Defense, as well as global groups really in every region, because the challenges on deepfakes don't limit to a certain industry, a certain vertical, or a certain language. The last piece here is that deepfake detection, candidly, is not a silver bullet. There is not kind of one ring to rule them all for some of the fans who get my reference in the audience. But within all cybersecurity, it's very much a perimeter strategy. It's how can you make it just hard enough for a fraudster that they'll either stop or they'll move on to try and breach someone else's system. And so when you're thinking about deepfake detection, even when caller ID or ANI or device checks or IP, GPS, whatever you want to call it, if all those say, yes, it's Ben, Reality Defender says, yes, but it's a deepfake. So when you think about it, a lot of the legacy tools that purely focus only on biometrics are just not enough. And that's where kind of the marriage of inference approaches like Reality Defender and provenance approaches at ValidSoft really empower each other to make 2 + 2 equal much larger than 4.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, that really leads us on very nicely to the next topic about, why ValidSoft and Reality Defender. So what happens when you bring biometrics and deepfake detection together? Each, as you said, are solving a different part of the identity question, whether the human is real, who that human is. So Ben, would love for you to kind of dig in a little bit more about how these two capabilities are really reinforcing each other in practice.
Fantastic. So when we're thinking about deepfake detection, we're thinking about verifying what the caller is, not who the caller is. And what that's doing is confirming that the audio stream itself is human before any need for biometrics are run. Now, biometrics are still viable, But the idea is you can get enough information oftentimes before someone actually engages, just because the real-time voice stream might have other types of artifacts that platforms like Reality Defender can extract and quantify and compare to various signatures we're tracking in the thousands to either reference a known generative model, particularly for voice, or potentially an unknown model with a technique we may have developed in the lab with our red team. And what it means is when a new model comes out, whether it's a known platform or an unknown platform from the dark web, Reality Defender is already able to catch it. It also means that Reality Defender is partnering with some of the leading generative AI platforms, like the ones I can name publicly are platforms like 11 Labs and Play AI, because these are platforms that are being used for agentic tech, and they want to ensure that when their regulated clients are using them, they know full well that if a new model comes out, Reality Defender can detect it. So putting it all together, Reality Defender is focusing on what the caller is, ValidSoft biometrics, confirming who the caller is, focus on matching the verified human voice with the enrolled identity in a very secure way. And together, they block cloned voices before they reach an agent, before there's a potential impersonation, before any kind of customer monies or customer identities or customer systems can potentially be compromised. And what this pairing does, it creates a truly continuous chain of trust across the IVR, across mobile, across live agent workflows. And it does it in a way where the agent does not have to become a cybersecurity or fraud expert. What they want to do is to get a quick determination to flag or block a user or an action or a wire transfer or an account takeover. And so what it means is this is truly becoming the foundation for safer automation, more efficient self-serve, and consistent identity really across all channels. Right now, we're focusing mostly on banks because the fraud is most measurable, but that's expanding really across any industry that uses voice to identify or make actions across financial assets globally.
That's really some really excellent points there, Ben, and agree with exactly what you've said. Again, come back to this point of inference and provenance. First question, is it a human? The second question, is it the right human? And if we take that capability and bring it into the current contact center that we have today, we have to apply that as a test to every call that comes in. But you're right, and you flag something that's really important. There were 51 billion robocalls in the US last year. And every one of those goes in and clogs up the queue into the contact center. Any one of those that comes through has got a real return on investment to be able to eliminate that. That's where deepfake starts to really shine. We're starting to identify these before they ever come near the queue, the agents, or whatever.
Yeah,
Just,
Pat, we're not just talking about, the actual account level fraud, but also the
yeah,
cost,
the
the hourly
cost.
cost of human call center workers, whether it's a Google or others calling and clogging it up with thousands or millions of restaurant reservations, but also true robocalls that are trying to do voice-based DDoS attacks.
Yeah.
We had a client who believes that they were the recipient of one of these attacks. So DDoS attacks aren't just online trying to shut down a website, shut down a bank systems, but also trying to shut down the real-time communication flows for call centers, whether it's governments or banks or large organizations.
Yeah, and there are several billion calls a day that are placed into contact centers. They're coming into the contact center, the IVR, the IVA today. In the future, they're going to come into the agentic contact center. Now, you regularly put out tests on your blogs and LinkedIn and so on and so forth. And the answer in my mind is the same to every question that you've asked. Can you tell the difference between whether this is a real voice or a real image or a real video? And the answer is you can't, right? And that's where the state of deepfake has got to. It's now got to the point where the human ear in the contact center cannot tell the difference between a synthetic voice and a real human being voice. And facial and video has got to the same position. And so now we have this situation where the evolution of what's happening in contact center. Today, it's human agents and humans, right? We need to take the human agent out because they can no longer hear. That's where our technology comes. That's the current architecture that we go, the 7-layer architecture. We're moving, and very, very quickly, to the 11-layer architecture, which is the agentic AI contact center. That's a black box where we can spin up hundreds of thousands of AI agents. And whether it's layer 3 or layer 5 in that architecture, whichever model you're looking at, that's exactly where your technology and my technology fits in. Because now it's not just a one-off check that you have to do. It's continuous. for the entire time that call is open, I need to know whether there's been an injection, whether the voice has changed, whether it's been a handoff or whatever. And that's continuous deepfake detection, continuous voice authentication.
Yeah, that's a really key point, Pat. I mean, one of the things we help our clients focus on is whether the fraud's happening at the beginning of the call or at the end of the call. My previous life at Goldman Sachs, where Pat is also a fellow Goldman Sachs alum, there was a situation where Goldman Sachs was about to make an investment in the tens of millions of dollars. And it wasn't until about an hour into the phone call that the person that claimed to work at Google, suddenly their voice broke and it was somebody else. It was the founders of the company trying to commit fraud. And I'll let you guys Google it, find out who that is, because it's all public. And what that really speaks to is that fraud doesn't always happen right at the beginning of a call. We've had what we're calling real-time deepfake autocorrect, which we've actually seen in the European markets, where let's use the example of Aphrodite as a CFO of a company, real voice, real Aphrodite, real phone line, making a wire transfer. What's called a man-in-the-middle attack, grabbing the voice stream, waiting until Aphrodite is about to confirm an account number, and for those few seconds, actually saying a different account number. So what it means is that in this example, Aphrodite would have gone through all of the kind of zero-knowledge proof-based authentications, her device, her connection, her IP address, her name, her voice, everything else. And then 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, into the phone call. The most important part of the call, the account number, is actually being changed. Aphrodite's not noticing it, neither is the counterparty. And what that speaks to is that we're not in a world anymore where a one-time authentication is good enough. You can't just do it at the beginning of a call. And so with solutions like Reality Defender, the first 10 seconds of the call are as protected, as scanned, as accurate as the last 10 seconds, whether it's a 10-second call or a 10-hour call. Now, we don't have any 10-hour calls, but for call center workers that are having oftentimes very long conversations, potentially with different types of clients who have many, many questions, that last question can be the one that defrauds the client, executes an account takeover, or damage reputation of somebody on the line.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Let's get into some of the practicalities of this, because I think hopefully at this point people realize that this is a huge issue that needs to be solved. But how about like kind of actually implementing the tools themselves and like what companies should be looking for in like modern platforms? So obviously there's been a kind of a shift in the market, nuances stepping out of the biometric space, and teams are having to rethink their voice identity stack and how deepfake detection fits into that. So Pat, when organizations go think about migrating their existing system to a modern platform, what are some of the things that they need to think about? How easy is it to do that? Do they have to start from scratch? We'd love your insight here.
Well, first and foremost, it is a very troubling time for the industry in general, and it's a time of terrific upheaval. There are hundreds of deployments of that technology out there, and it's not just Nuance. We've had the exit of hyperscalers as well, Amazon with Voice ID, and so on and so forth. And what that means is that there's a force change in the marketplace, and the timeline is not driven just by the end of life date. It's driven by the break fix capability within those organizations. That's a fundamental point, because when you work at an organization that is end of life, the last thing you want to do as a highly skilled engineer is spend your life working on effectively a dead end. And so you're going to leave, and we're already starting to see that's happening across the industry in general, not specifically, but across the industry, where people will go. If you're a speech scientist, you're going to want to work on the latest technology in speech science. That's natural. What it means, however, for the organizations is twofold. One is that the infrastructure around those deployments, particularly Nuance, is very organized and very structured. So that's really good news, meaning that the audio typically tends to be available for the original enrollments, or there's plenty of audio around conversational side. So the biggest question that organizations have is, what happens to my voice prints? Do I lose them? How do I have to go back to my customers to re-enroll? And the answer to that is no. So we have a very prescriptive process, which is engineering. It's a project plan, a project management, devised based on the number of voice prints, by the type of platform that you're on, by your infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But it's prescriptive. And with that, then it means that we can devise a very focused project plan, which takes the lift, and there's no downtime whatsoever. There's no loss of fidelity on the voice prints migration. We put an appliance in. If it's an on-premise deployment, it runs and it just converts the audio into the new voice print. You then run it in parallel with the existing one, and then you can cut over in due course. It is And I make it that simple, but it's engineering. That's what it comes down to. That's the good
Yeah.
news.
No,
The other
that's
thing,
exactly why we chose to partner with ValidSoft. I mean, coming from the big banks ourselves, if it doesn't easily update, if there's a breaking change, well, clients just won't choose that type of vendor. And similarly with Reality Defender, within deepfake detection, oftentimes the thought is that it may seem like a black box. There's a lot of snake oil in the cybersecurity industry. And that's one of the biggest reasons why on our side, the question is, does it work? How does it work? Really push Reality Defender to open up our whole solution with public API and SDK access. And so whether you work at a big bank, small bank, government organization, or large Fortune 500, you can go into our website and just play with API and SDK, prove that it works. You actually integrate it into a solution in less than 15 minutes. And that's what allows our clients to get the confidence to actually use it in real time. That's also why we partner with ValidSoft, really integrating our tool and API, which can deploy wherever a client wants, as Pat mentioned. Both organizations are cloud, prem, edge, on device, on chip as well. But the challenge is really around, can we do this quickly and efficiently? Can we ensure that we're at least as good, but fairly better than legacy tools? And how can we help future-proof our solution against impending threats, whether it's robocalls, whether it's agentic tech, or whether it's explosion of next generation state level attacks by state level actors of generative AI across voice and other modalities.
and I would say that it's a real opportunity for every company. I appreciate that nobody wants to have the problem of having to shift, but it solves a lot of problems that are inherent in legacy infrastructure deployments today. And it's an opportunity, as Ben says, to move forward, get better performance, cover your deepfake detection problems, other synthetic voice attacks. All of that is part and parcel of the future contact center platform that you need to have, with a focus on ultimately moving to the agentic AI contact center. You are built for that. And by the way, when we say contact center, it's exactly the same problem for the enterprise help desk, and the same technologies are built in. One point on the compliance side, we say that when any call come into a contact center or help desk, it needs to be able to answer the question: is it a human? Is it the right human? On the agent side, or the individual that's answering the call, the employee help desk assistant, you need to know which agent picked up that call, because sometimes it's a round robin and it can be picked up. And this is for compliance purposes, and particularly where it's offshore. Which agent picked it up? Is that the correct authorized agent to answer this call? Is it the same agent that followed this call through to the end? And all of that needs to be filed away as part of the audit trail for your contact center agent side. That's an entirely different process flow. But again, that's out of the box for the capabilities going forward. And all of this is part and parcel of your migration.
Mhm.
That's great. Talking about compliance and kind of like building on that, how do you see this kind of moving forwards? Like, are there going to be regulations around biometrics, around deepfakes? Is there anything coming into the market that organizations need to be aware of as they're thinking about modernizing their tech stack?
Yeah, so we're spending a lot of time with global regulators, and I think that the challenges are growing by the day, given that the technology is moving a lot quicker than regulators can catch up. And what it means is that oftentimes we have to scare regulators ourselves. We'll recently gave testimony in US Congress, and with permission always, we deepfaked Senator Blumenthal. And we also had Senator Hawley and others really on all sides of the aisle, truly bipartisan. And so with all the excitement in the world, I think that the challenges around deepfakes and deepfake fraud are a truly bipartisan effort. Our challenge, though, is regulators are still catching up to what they need to do. Now, we're very optimistic. Several jurisdictions globally, but also kind of state and local in the US, UK, EU, Asia as well, are signaling expectations around synthetic media detection. We are supporting those and trying to help support open standards to ensure that whether third-party developers are integrating deepfake detection, government organizations, or Fortune 500s are trying to test for benchmarking or just get usability as simple as possible. It should be easy for everybody to be able to use. And so, putting all this together, the rise in AI-driven fraud is truly pushing regulators to treat detection, deepfake detection, identity fraud detection, as part of the standard fraud and operational risk controls playbook. It's not a question of if there's a problem, there's a question of not just when there's a problem, but wow, I've already had a problem. Do I know about it or not? And I can't tell you how many times we get a phone call from a CTO or a CISO who for a year said, deepfake's not an issue, and they say, holy moly, We have the issue right now. It's actually happening today. My board of directors, my CEO needs a solution tomorrow. And that's what we're here to support.
Yeah, and I'd add that from a data privacy standpoint, it's an area that we've always focused on extensively. We have a privacy by design approach. We work very closely with the Article 29 group in the EU. We're 100% compliant with GDPR, and there isn't harmonization across the world. So, but if you fall foul of it, and by falling foul, I mean you have to have explicit informed consent from every consumer whose voice print that you take or any biometric that's taken. That's how stringent it is. If you fall foul of that, and you won't with our technology because we're 100% compliant with BIPA, CCPA, Texas Privacy Act, Washington State, you name it, we've got it. But if you fall foul of that, it's a class action. And if you go and do a search in the web about technology vendors in this space and class actions, I think you'll be surprised with what pops up. But it's a really, really important area. It cannot be overlooked, and it's got to be implemented with privacy by design.
Yeah. So definitely a lot to consider around what you're recording, the permissions from customers, as well as what's happening from the regulation space and the government.
Absolutely.
In Reality Defender's case, kind of thinking about, since we're again focused only on identifying the AI itself, not the identity, we're doing inference, not provenance. The fact that we could do really all of our computation on anything that could potentially touch on identity, we're doing it all in memory. And so with a commitment for clients that we're not able to see or touch or retain that information. Now, sometimes they might ask us after the fact, hey, we had a deep fake. Can you look at it? And they'll give us permission to look at it. But by default, can't see anything. Our system is completely secure, especially and even from us ourselves. And that really is a commitment to our clients when they're having hundreds of thousands of concurrent phone calls per day. Every single contact center is treated equally secure. And all the information, potential PII as well, is equally secure as well. And that's just spoken to by the fact that we're working with the most exciting and regulated organizations on the planet.
Yeah, and I'll add to that when it comes to voice prints and the creation of voice prints, again, privacy and data protection are very important elements to consider. We've taken a mathematical approach and a cryptographic approach to creation of our voice prints. They're one-way hashes. You can't reverse engineer them. They're quantum safe. You can't transpose them. You break the system, and so on and so forth. So everything that can be done from that perspective is done. One other really important area is when you start dealing with algorithms in general, is there discrimination within the context of the algorithms itself? And how can you prove that there isn't, or at least to a degree that doesn't compromise the actual approach that you're taking? And that's a really important part. And as you start to work with financial institutions in particular, they will have model risk management groups that will evaluate your models to make sure that doesn't have that discrimination and so on and so forth. But that's all part and parcel of the productization that Ben and Reality Defender and ValidSoft have brought together to the marketplace, which is ticking all of these crucial boxes, which are perhaps the most important part of any transition away from where you are today, is the consideration that all of this has already been taken into account, so you can just focus on the migration.
Yeah, it just has to work. It just has.
And it will.
With just a few minutes left, I want to remind the audience, please, if you have a question for Ben or Pat, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll answer that in the next few minutes. As we're wrapping up, Pat and Ben, any final tips on what enterprises should be thinking about, or what can companies expect to see next from ValidSoft and Reality Defender?
Yeah, the priority absolutely is to ensure that identity systems and processes can distinguish synthetic from human activity. And with the explosion of voice agents and agentic tech, it is that synthetic voice, permissioned or not, which creates a whole range of exciting problems to solve over the next few years. Deepfake detection is already becoming a default requirement, not just for any high trust environment, for really any environment, whether it's with organizations and call centers, whether it's with telecoms, whether it's with device manufacturers, whether it's with online gaming. Again, all of them involving real-time communications with voice. So really that means future-proofing and pairing both detection for deepfakes with biometric identity for identity of voice matching into a single, simple, efficient, and scalable flow so that organizations always know who and what the caller actually is. And so on our side, working with ValidSoft, this has been the most exciting time of a partnership, not just scaling for kind of rip and replace with some legacy providers, but also really trying to educate the market on some of the other solutions in the market who are saying, oh, yes, we also do AI too. And in reality, the AI they're doing isn't the same kind of AI that we're doing. And that's proven by the public NIST benchmarks that we're consistently scoring #1 on. And so I'll invite anybody who's curious, perhaps they're able to share a link to that, or you can just Google it yourself. But the key item here is staying top tier in terms of detection, but ensuring you're pushing updates out ahead of the problems, ahead of the latest threat, ahead of the latest generative AI models, whether they're public, whether there's something more dangerous coming from a single actor, and doing that in an efficient way wherever you're deployed.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, Ben. And from our perspective and in collaboration with Reality Defender, I mean, we're really excited about the next 12 to 18 months in particular. Ben mentioned a rip and replace. We've got the migration projects which are going to affect the entire industry. And together we're very well positioned to provide the best solutions to really deal with the issues that have affected or plagued this sector for the last 12 to 18 months. We don't believe the hype. We can detect and prevent deepfakes. Voice authentication works and works very, very well indeed. And you've got an opportunity to move ahead with your organization, future-proof your technology, get performance gains, and protect your customers against these type of attacks. So that's on one dimension. And then in a broader dimension, we're starting to embark upon a tremendously exciting element all around voice, which is voice commerce, voice payments, agentic AI commerce, agentic AI payments. And at the heart of that, there's my voice and the veracity of my voice. But my voice will become my payment card. And when I instruct somebody, I've got to have a transaction that's got built-in irrevocability, non-repudiation, data mutability with precision identity assurance. That's what you're getting from the combination of our two organizations.
Thank you so much. So let's just take a couple of questions before we wrap up. We have one from a Canadian voice AI agency. They said they've had a lot of interest, some very strict data residency and privacy laws, which we touched on. The question is there a solution, something we can integrate easily with an existing voice agent platform? I think we've talked a lot about kind of the early pieces of the core, but obviously there's like bigger systems that companies will be needing to integrate in. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking for Reality Defender, the answer is absolutely yes. And I'll invite you or any others just to go to our website and sign up to access our API or SDK. 2 lines of code integrated in less than 15 minutes. And absolutely, you can deploy it wherever you want in any region, in any jurisdiction. If we're providing a SaaS environment, we also support all the regulatory excitement in every region, including Canada. We also are supported with our investors and our partners that include Accenture, IBM, Booz, Deloitte, and KPMG, who do a tremendous amount of work in Canada, specifically bringing in US vendors in Canada and solving for any kind of jurisdictional issues on data sovereignty. So the short answer is yes. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I want to make sure I covered everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a Canadian perspective, we're very familiar with the data privacy, data protection rules and regulations, vectors of trust, and so on and so forth with Canada. So, and we've got experience of, building technology to 100% comply with those jurisdictional requirements. In terms of deployment, again, very similar to what Ben has just said, available in any deployment model, and it's all API driven. So very easy to get access to, test out, and then deploy in production. Increasingly, what we're starting to see as well is people were asking questions about Reality Defender and ValidSoft. You guys coming together, what does it mean for us as clients? And many of our clients are now coming to us and saying, well, we want a single image. And what we're working towards is that single unified approach to providing a one point capability for access. And that's something that you're going to see. So Ben might want to elaborate a little bit on that as well, but that's exciting for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The name of the game is making it as simple as possible to deploy. And so thinking about leveraging ValidSoft with Reality Defender Signal built in, a single API, a single instance, and very excited to dive deeper with any folks who are interested in discussing.
Awesome. And one other question that we probably should have touched on a little bit earlier, but what actually happens when something is flagged as a deep fake or, the voice print doesn't match? And what should organizations be thinking about, like in terms of action and what to actually do when they find this?
Yeah, I'll take it just from the point of view of the contact center first. So generally speaking, if something is a robocall and it's sitting in a queue and you detect that that's a robocall, then you can program that to just delete it completely out of the queue. So that's number one. Call comes in and it gets through and it's now being handled with an agent. Within the first 1.5, 2 seconds, 3 seconds of speech, the screen will tell the agent whether it's a deep fake or whether it's a voice print mismatch. And at that particular point in time, the agent has the ability to be able to either terminate the call or escalate it. That's typically speaking the process flow that goes along. But that's all programmable based on whatever a specific organization wants to do with those
Yeah.
particular instances, including pushing it directly to security so that they can look at this, because it could have fingerprints on it that want to be captured, or you might want to take it through knowing that it's a bad actor.
Yeah.
You might want to take it through to the next level and actually clarify that and then put it onto what's called a watch list. And the watch list can be used then to screen other calls as they're coming in to the contact center and say, if this is a bad actor and it's on this watch list, terminate it or put it through the security department. That's the type of capability you have with these modern systems.
Yeah, the key item here is that organizations should not have to create any net new fraud detection playbook. Reality Defender signals feed into the same playbook, same alerting that a call center worker is already engaging with. Or oftentimes, Reality Defender is able to detect the deepfake before it gets to the human as well. So during the initial IVR, when it says say one or say two to talk to so-and-so or move to a different department, Reality Defender is able to detect the deepfake in the first few seconds. And so again, the call center worker does not need to become an expert at deepfake detection or AI or even know there's a deepfake. The same processes they're already used to flag or block or escalate are also feeding in from Reality Defender as well. So thinking about how kind of this perimeter approach is feeding into a fraud engine, deepfake detection is just another signal. But I would argue it's the only signal left when everything else says yes, yes, yes. Reality Defender and deepfake detection says yes, but it's AI.
I did just want to ask one more question, even though we're tight on time, because I think it's a good one. So we've spent the conversation talking about voice, but one of the obviously other important channels that's emerging is video. So the question is, how do you consider voice in video? Can it be used in conjunction with deepfake video, or do you consider this a separate category? And I think this is probably for Ben.
I'll say that Reality Defender, while we're focusing on all modalities, and we're talking about voice here, really strong on real-time video. And in real-time video, there's two components of it. One of them is the visual component and also the audio component. And we're mirroring both of those technologies in what's called a ensemble approach. And so even if Aphrodite turns off her camera and we're able to track only the audio, we're just as accurate, pretty close to 100%, in terms of detecting that Aphrodite in this example is a deepfake persona herself. And so a lot of times now you'll see video conferencing solutions as the main solution used by call centers. And so it's audio now. It is moving toward video as well. And we're already well positioned there, also including native integrations with platforms like Zoom and Teams. And so if folks are interested, they can test that out as well. Again, just going into the Zoom or Teams app store. I believe we'll give free access. We'll confirm that afterwards. But any folks who are interested, happy to share more there. And again, it's all available online.
Thank you so much to Pat and Ben, being excellent panelists, and thank you to all of our attendees for staying through the end and joining us for this great conversation. And look out for an email from us, and we'll be sending the recording to everybody. Thank you.